Cal Stewart. Welcome to Carving Online. In this second session, we're going to be painting the Black Capped Chickadee that we had carved in the first one. So get your brushes, your paints together, and let's get started. To begin the painting process, the first thing you're going to need is a palette. And for a palette, I like to use just plain Styrofoam plates. And these can be purchased at any store for really nominal fee, anywhere from 80 cents for 50 of them to $1 for 100, so they're pretty cheap. You can just use them and throw them away. The other thing I like to use is plastic cups, which are the small wine cups. I just fill them with good clean water to keep my brushes cleaned out. And you can have what is called a brush tank. You can put water in that. And speaking of water, I like to use distilled water because distilled water doesn't have all the contaminants in it. It can tend to create mold or stuff under a painted bird. I've had to remove some stuff from a painted bird once, and it was just like it was spalted. And another thing we normally do is I put everything on in a very small wash coat. Not thin, not out of the tube, it's watered down. The paints that you're going to need, I use Sonja paints, but you can use any other brand such as Liquitex or Winsor Newton. Golden makes a good paint, but you can use those as well. The paints you're going to need for this process, I use to paint the Chickadee is the burnt umber. You'll need carbon black. You'll need Nimbus gray. You'll also need raw sienna. And notice some of these tubes are different just because this is the newer tubes and they've changed their design on the tube of the paint, but it's still the same. You'll need raw umber. You'll need titanium white, ultramarine blue, warm white, and yellow oxide. We'll use some of these colors more than others, and some way less than others. Some are just used to tint other colors as we go through the process, but you'll see that as we start painting the bird itself. Now all of these paints you can get, I use Sonjas exclusively because they're a matte finish, they're not shiny. They turn out real flat, and they have what is called a gouache. That's some sort of an earth element that's put into the paint itself as a binder, and which works very well, makes the paint flat. Now before we get started on painting the bird, the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to seal it. Now any number of ways to seal the bird, and I will show you that process here. Let me move the colors out of the way. You can see that I have the bird here carved, ready to go. I have it on like a little armature, which is nothing more than you can use a dowel. This just happened to be a metal rod that I had from somewhere, and I just drilled a hole and put a screw in the end of it. And it's easy to hold on to. And I have a block that I've cut a hole in that allows it to sit into it like so. And it keeps me from touching the bird a lot because your oils on your hand can get on the bird and it makes the paint bead up. But at some point you will have to handle it as you're doing this. So to seal the bird, what I use is I use a 50-50 mix of lacquer and lacquer thinner. Now you can use Deft, which is available at like Home Depot or Lowe's. That comes in a spray can, or it comes in a regular paint type can. I would prefer if you use that type of sealer that you use the brush on type, because if you spray it you tend to get it heavy in certain places, and you don't want to fill up all of your texture lines that you've taken so long to put in. Usually about 2 or 3 coats is all. This lacquer thinner dries pretty quick, 5-10 minutes, and it's ready to go to paint over. If you're using oils, you do not have to seal it because the oil works as a sealer itself. It will not make all of the texture lines heal themselves and heal up. But if you're using a water-based paint, you have to put some sort of a sealer on it. Now, as I said, I use a 50-50 mixture of lacquer and lacquer thinner. And as you can see, it's just a clear liquid. Again, you don't brush it on real thick. I just use an old brush that I used, and you just don't worry about cleaning it. Dip it in there, put it on, let it dry out. But once you dip it back in there again, if it's dried out, it'll unseal it, and you can use it again. I just go down in here with this brush, And don't worry about trying to knock it off. And then I just start painting it on the bird, just like that. And what it does is it just seals in. You want to do this in not too confined of a place because it does have a tendency to emit a few fumes. So what I'll do is I'll just get this bird all sealed up. Don't worry about getting it on the eyes or anything else, because we're going to paint right over the eyes too, and that's going to make it, the whole process is going to be sealed up on the eyes, and all we're going to do is just take a X-Acto knife or a toothpick and we're going to clean all that stuff off the eyes. Since they're glass, it won't adhere to it anyway, so we don't have to worry about it. You want to use a relatively stiff brush to put this on, so you can get it down into all the grooves of the texture and everything that you've put on. So just be sure you get it nice and sealed up and everything. Even underneath areas that you've cut out, you want to be sure you get up under there as well, because sometimes I've forgotten to put it under there and I've ended up making it look like it was healed up again. So you want to make sure you get under every nook and cranny and crevice that's on this bird. Now you can use this to not just for bird carving, but if you want to use it to seal other carvings that you've done, that's fine too. But this is kind of the thing that the bird carvers came up with, was developing using this. The original version of this stuff was called TK Sealer, and it was developed by some folks in Louisiana. So I just discovered what it was, and so just mixed my own. Okay, now that we've got the bird all sealed, what we want to do is we're going to give it about 5 or 10 minutes to let it dry, and then from that process we'll start the painting process. See, it's all painted over and sealed. Okay, we're going to start painting the chickadee. We start with the head, what we call the head, the ear coverts, and the throat, and the back of the head. And as you know, if you've seen chickadees, they have a black head and little white cheek patches on the ear coverts. So we're going to go ahead and start laying that part of it in, and we'll get started. The first thing we're going to need is a little bit of burnt umber. Just put it out on your palette. And you take a little bit of ultramarine blue. You're going to hear me refer to paints in here in like a percentages, like a 50-50 or something like that. This is going to be a 50-50 mix, equal portions of ultramarine blue and burnt umber. But this is not rocket science, so you don't have to worry about trying to measure it correctly. Just make sure you try to get as close and estimate as best you can, and it'll give you the colors you need. But now we just use just a little touch of carbon black, just to kind of give it just a little bit of snap. And when I say a touch, I mean just about like that right there. That's all there is to it. There's not a lot there. Now we'll mix this up, but also before we do that, I want to show you some of the brushes that I'll use. I have a set of brushes here. These particular brushes are called dry brushes, and that's really what they are. Dry brushing is a technique where you put paint on the brush and then wipe almost all of it off, and then you actually put it over several layers over the area you're trying to paint. That's dry brushes. Then I have another brush here. This is called like a number 3 brush. It's got a fine point to it. It's rounded, and it's good to use to lay large areas in. If you're trying to cover a large area, it's good for that. A lot of brushes will come with a protective tube over the top to protect them. I end up losing a lot of these, so they don't have the protective tops on them quite a bit. I have some fine detail brushes that I use. This one happens to be like a number 1 and a number 2, and that just tells you how small the tip is. I use this for fine areas, for laying in real fine lines on the bird, painting around the edges of feathers. It's good for that. I have a couple of old brushes that have been used up quite a bit. You can see that they're flat. I use them as blending brushes when I'm blending two areas of paint together to give a soft edge. I just use these. They're good for that. Also for mixing paint. And I have various other brushes that I've used. I have some. These are also I use for dry brushes. These are just some that I've had for quite a while. They worked well for me, so I just started using them. But basically, these first few I showed you, the ones you really should start out painting with. And when you get into bigger birds, of course, you're going to have bigger brushes. You start getting into bigger, like ducks and things like that. But for painting small birds, this is good. So we're going to go ahead and mix this paint up. And the first thing I like to do is I will add flow medium. And flow medium is it's available from Joe Sonja. You can get it anywhere. But what it does is it breaks down the molecules of the paint and makes it flow on a lot easier. And you don't need a lot of it. So I'll usually add about 2 or 3 drops to this part I've got here. And this is just a dropper bottle, like you can get it at Hobby Lobby, or Michael's carries bottles like this. And then I just take one of my older brushes here, and I take and mix it up. And you can see how that flow medium has mixed into the paint. And what I'm trying to achieve here is a dark brownish black. And it'll just, you just got to keep mixing it up. The other thing that I also use when I'm doing this is I have a spray bottle that I use that has just distilled water in it, as you can see here, and it's a mister. And I use that to off and on to mist my paint with to keep it dry. Wet, so it doesn't dry out on me, because the acrylics will dry pretty quick. So a couple of squirts with that will just keep it moist and keeps it thin. And then I just go back in here and just keep mixing it all up together. And you can see that I've got this sort of this brownish black color. It's what most of us bird carving call a true black. It's not really black, but it's got that little brown undertone to it. Now you can see it right there. That's what we're going after. Now the other thing we're going to do, I'm going to clean out this brush here that I just used to mix with. You'll notice I've got this sitting on an old towel, and I just use it to daub off the brush a little bit like that, just to keep it clean, and I'll lay it over here. I also have a paper towel laying over to my side. These are just regular paper towels that I just use to brush things off, especially when I'm going to dry brush. I'll brush off one of those paper towels. Now the other thing we're going to need is a white color. And the white color is just warm white. And this is this particular color here. It's just a white that's got another binder in it that makes it not so stark white. But I'll put it over here on the other side of the palette. And then I'll add a little bit of flow medium to it. Now if you're going to blend 2 colors together and you haven't worked very fast, I've been doing this so long I don't have to do it, but there is a medium called a retarder. And what that does is it slows the drying time of the paint down. And what you can do is just take 1 drop of that and drop it in each puddle that you've made here. And then you can, as you go back in, we can mix this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up this white that I've got here and get it mixed up. A lot of times I like to use you can use a palette knife. It's got a fine end to it to mix a lot of this too. But an older brush works well. You don't want to mix paints with a newer brush because it messes up the bristles. You don't want to be doing that. And as you find out, as you paint over wood for a long time, the bristles are just going to start fraying on you over time, and you'll have to just replace the brush. But you can get some pretty good deals at some of the local hobby stores that have put their brushes on sale most of the time. Now what I like to do is I'll take 2 brushes that I'm going to use here, and I will use them to this is the number 3 and this is the number 1. All I'll do is I'm going to spray these up again and just put some water on them, get them, and I'm going to take the whitened one here, get it loaded up, and I just kind of lay it onto the off to the side here just a minute. And then I'm going to take the black on this other brush and load it up. Now the reason why I'm doing this is I want to have both brushes ready to go. That's when I start laying the color onto the bird. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the black on, which is going to cover the crown and the underneath the cheek. So just paint it on. You can see how thin that it is right here. And if it comes out that it's not thin enough, I just dip it in a little water that I've got here in a cup, and you'll see how I've really got it thinned up. You want to do real thin washes. You don't want to do straight paint. So you see I'm starting to put this in. And this bill's going to be black. Don't worry about getting it in the bill. Now I'm going to come right down to where that eye patch is. You can see right there the eye patch, and then where this little cheek patch is right here. I'll bring it right down to and where these two are meeting right here. As you can see, there you are. Where the straight line is. I'm going to come back with my white real quick. And I'm just going to run on just a little bead of that right along the edge of that right there. And I'm going to come back with one of these older brushes that I've gotten. I said I use as a blending brush. And all I do is just simply go right in here and blend those two edges together. So I want that hard line. As you can see now, it's a very good soft line transition point where those two were at. And I continue doing this process all the way around the bird, including the cheek patch and everything else. And I'll come back in and do that. So I'll continue doing this, and when we come back, I'll show you how let it dry, and I'll show you put another coat on, and that should be the final coat. So we'll see what we can do at that point.